One thing I've learned about interpersonal communication theories is that while they apply to everyday life, sometimes they can sound really complex, especially when you read them and don't have a clear understanding. So in this video, I'm going to break down some interpersonal communication theories. We'll look at, in particular, social penetration theory, uncertainty reduction theory, social exchange theory, relational dialectics theory, communication privacy management theory, and family communication patterns theory. So the first theory we're going to get into is social penetration theory. This is a very, very popular communication theory. If you have studied communication for a couple of years, then this is a theory that everyone will expect you to know. Social penetration theory was developed by Altman and Taylor, and they came up with the fact that as we self-disclose, we will go deeper and deeper into our relationship. What do I mean by that? Well, in the beginning, you're going to tell a little bit of stuff about yourself, and it's going to stay at the surface level. But as you share more and more information about who you are, your relationship will usually get deeper, and you'll feel closer connected to the people around you. Now, the reason I have the onion here in this picture is because Altman and Taylor definitely use an onion analogy as they explain this theory. If you've seen the movie Shrek, you know that ogres have layers. So just like ogres, just like onions, people have layers. We have our peripheral layers, the outside, small surface stuff. There's a lot of little things about us that we don't mind people knowing about us. Whether it be our name, our favorite color, it's all the little stuff. Then, as you get closer to somebody, you're probably going to start telling them some intermediate layer stuff, such as a childhood memory, your favorite activities to do on the weekend, maybe even some of your goals in life. But as you get even closer to that person, eventually you may realize, hey, I'm starting to share some central layer stuff with them, the core of who I am as a person. This could be your values and beliefs. This could be your deepest, darkest fears. But essentially, who makes you who you are. Now, keep in mind that not everybody is going to get to your central layer. Most people will stay at your peripheral layer. That's where we're going to feel the most comfortable. I would say your really good friends and family members are going to get to your intermediate layers, and probably your closest friends, family members, romantic partner will be at your central layer, knowing exactly who you are and have a deep, close connection to you. In addition to social penetration theory, uncertainty reduction theory is pretty popular. This theory was developed by Berger and Calabrese. These two realized when we meet somebody new, we want to know information about this new person. Think about it. If you were at your job and some new person came in and they were going to be working with you 24/7 while you're at your job, you're probably going to want to know, well, is this a good person? Will I like them? Will we click? Will we clash? So, in some ways, you're going to try to find information about who they are. There are 3 different strategies that you could use. The passive strategy, which is just observing them. Just noticing something about maybe what they're wearing, their actions, who they talk to, who they don't talk to. Or maybe you use an active approach, where in this case you ask someone that does know a little bit more information about them. Maybe you have a friend who worked with them at a previous job, and you go to your friend and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? Can you tell me more about that person? And then the last strategy would be interactive strategy. This would be going to that person directly and having a conversation, or even having a conversation through social media. But because it's direct, you're in an interactive situation. Conditional uncertainty reduction theory, there's social exchange theory. Now this theory was developed by George Homans. George Homans definitely built on the work of researchers before him, and this theory has been developed even more so and refined by researchers after him. Essentially, this theory says that for every single relationship, at a subconscious level, we weigh out the costs and the rewards. So if a relationship is very beneficial and rewarding, we'll stay in that relationship, or we'll try to develop it if it's beginning. If it's too costly or seems too negative, well, then we'll either stop developing that relationship or even just stop the relationship overall. Think of it this way. Let's say you become friends with a star basketball player. They're very popular, very well liked, and they're super outgoing. And you see it as a reward to be their friend because that person has a huge social network that now you have access to, and they get to go to all the fun parties, which again, you get invited to now. But let's say at month 1, you guys start to fight, and you fight, and you fight, to where every single time that you hang out, you are always fighting, and it's starting to become emotionally draining to you. Well, at that point, it's going to be too costly, and you may decide, well, maybe I don't need to be this person's friend anymore. Be aware that what you consider a reward and what someone else considers a reward is going to be different. What you consider costly may be different for the next person. So it's very easy to say, well, you should leave that relationship, or that relationship is unhealthy. You may not realize what rewards they're getting out of that relationship that's making them want to stay. Additionally, if the balance is very, very close between cost and rewards, that's going to make people very confused, and if they should stay because there's definitely some tangible rewards there, or whether they should go. In additional social exchange, we have Relational Dialectics Theory. Now this theory was developed by Baxter and Montgomery. And Baxter and Montgomery said that in every single relationship that we have, there are two opposing tendencies. That at times we want one thing, but at the same exact time we want the opposite thing. And that it could be all existing in with one person or existing within the two people. What does that mean? Here's some examples. Openness versus protection. You may feel like, hey, I really need to share this information with my friend. I want to be open with them. But I also want to protect my privacy. I don't want them to know everything about what I do in my life. That's an opposing value. That's a dialectical tendency. Sometimes in relationships, you'll have one person who's very open and one person who's very private. And that can cause some conflict, especially because those tendencies are opposing each other. Then there's autonomy versus connection. Here's the example. I love being connected to my sister. People see us as frickin' frack. Somebody gave that example at one point, where we were pretty much always connected, where if I'm doing something, she knows about it, and if she's doing something, I know about it. But at the same time, I'm my own person. I have my own autonomy. I don't always want people to say, well, what are the two of you doing? Because sometimes I just need my me time. In a relationship, you may have one partner who is very autonomous and wants their me time, and you may have one person who's very connected and wants to always be together. And then there's novelty versus predictability. If you are dealing with this dialectic, you want something new and exciting and fun. You want the novelty. But you also want to be able to predict, hey, what's going to happen in this relationship? What can I expect out of this person? Keep in mind that in the beginning of a relationship, there's going to be a lot of novelty. We expect that. And towards the end of the relationship, or towards years later in the relationship, because not every relationship ends, there's going to be more predictability. Now, some people will say, well, I don't want to be in a rut. I don't want everything to be too predictable. But you don't want too much novelty either. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going home tonight and this person is going to be doing anything, right? You want to have some predictability about, can you expect the person to have cleaned their space? Can you expect the person to have cooked for you? Can you expect that every single time you see this person, they're going to behave in a rational format, right? So there's definitely a balance between wanting something new and exciting and fun, and then wanting something routine and comfortable and that puts you at ease because it's predictable. Now, while there are opposing tendencies that may make us want to share and not share, there's definitely those times where we just want to keep everything to ourselves. Communication privacy management theory was developed by Sandra Petronio, and she said there's a tension between sharing versus the desire to protect ourselves, and that when we want to, we should create informational boundaries. What does that look like? Well, I had a student, and he was very, very talkative. Every single class, I expected him to say something. That was just who he was. But then, when you start talking about self-disclosing and privacy, he became very, very quiet. And I pulled him aside after class and I said, hey, I noticed that you're not talking. Is everything okay? And he said, Miss Armstrong, I had a really good friend tell a secret. And so it's very hard for me to want to talk about self-disclosure and privacy because my privacy was violated. And I understood that. And I even said, because I know that you're uncomfortable with talking about this, then I'm going to respect your boundary and I'm going to respect your privacy, and you don't have to share anything about that issue. So if you find yourself in that same boat where you want to manage your privacy and not share something, make sure you create a I-centered message. Say, I don't feel comfortable sharing because of ... Don't just say, oh, why are you always in my business? Right? Because that's going to attack the other person. And they may feel like, oh, well, maybe we don't need to be friends anymore. So, those are a large number of the theories that we've covered thus far in this course. There's also Conner and Fitzpatrick's family communication patterns. But because I don't want this one video to be super long, I'm going to split this up into two, where I will discuss our final and last theory, Conner and Fitzpatrick's family communication patterns theory.